Okay, that's good.
All right.
Yeah, well,
All right. So welcome, Guillermo. And so Guillermo also represents this fantastic work coming out of Cisco called Agency. He'll talk a little bit more about that, and then we'll get into a conversation about what's going on. I just wanted to kind of share this really nice paper that came out a few days ago. Um, uh, um, on comparisons of various agent interoperability protocols. I'll post the link in the channel. And they did a very good job of comparing, A2A and MCP and ANP that we'll talk about a little bit more, and ACP from IBM and so on. And there are a couple of charts here that I recommend everybody to kind of look through. One of them is about what are the strength and possible improvements required in each of these protocols. And Guillermo, of course, you're very familiar with this, so hopefully we can go over this in your presentations. I think the main difference to me here, it feels like MCP is a manual lookup. You have to manually enter which tool you're going to use. Of course, the LLM can help you figure out which tool might be better. Nevertheless, it's manual. A to A, sorry, ACP from IBM is registry based. So that does have kind of a bottleneck, but has benefits of a registry. Then ATA from Google, as we just heard this morning, uses agent cards, but then depends on HTTP. But what is amazing about ANP, I'm really excited about, is ANP is kind of decentralization is baked into ANP using DIDs and so on, which may have some problems initially, but could be a solution over time. And this paper, written by other scientists, actually talks about this roadmap. It talks about MCP as stage one, ACP and A2A as kind of stage 2 and 3. But then it says maybe we need to move towards this decentralization, which is kind of amazing, Guillermo, that other researchers are kind of agreeing with some of the things that your team has put out. So I'm sure we'll talk more about that. And in the same spirit, go to the NANDA registry as well. So there are some other proposals and some demos that have been built for a similar kind of decentralization. So let me hand it back to Guillermo if you want to share your screen. But I just want to let the audience know that both of us are kind of pro decentralization here. Go ahead, Guillermo. Maybe describe yourself and your team's work as well.
yeah, hi everyone. My name is, so actually Guillermo is Guillaume in French, so slightly different pronunciation, but that's the same first name. By the way, I have a long, complicated last name, so people call me GSM at Cisco. It's simpler. And let me see if I can share my screen. Yeah, I'm going to share this one, which I think is the one I need to share if you guys want to. So can you guys see this slide here?
Yeah, we see the agency slide, yes.
Okay, great, excellent. So let me go full screen for a second. And so, of course, it's not going full screen on the right side screen. Anyway, I'll keep it like this. Hopefully, everyone can see this big enough. So, yeah. So there are a lot of protocols out there, and I'm afraid that with the agency work, we've just added to the a few more protocols, and thrown a few more protocols into the agentic party. So let me say a few words about how we came to launching this collective and this initiative with a number of partners, which is, by the way, growing every day. So don't ask me the entire list as we speak. So we've been really there's a few assumptions that we started to really work on a thesis which we started to form about 14 months ago. So really beginning of last year, January, February of last year. And we acquired the conviction that agents will be very important. And, I think here we are more than a year later, and we are hearing a lot about agents. And also the fact that agents will be the way, and I've heard a lot of comparison with Kubernetes, and so just like containerization, really accelerated the cloud native stack and the cloud era, we think that agents is going to basically crystallize the value of AI and Gen AI for enterprise. So we think agents will be important. And so we had this strong intuition, like a few others in the industry a while ago. And the second point is that on the one side, agents are still barely emerging, but we saw that immediately the question of how agents can work together and can team up came, and was a very strong intuition and also thesis we had that it will be the minute you have agents, the second after you want multiple agents to start working together. Because agents tend to be specialized, a bit like the way you hire talents today. You want to get agents from the best vendors, the best providers, the best teams across the world, whether they are open sourced or commercial agents. And you might build some agents for your own organization based on your business specificities. But there are many agents which, just like SaaS, you want to source from just the best the best providers. And so we started to really think about, okay, so what does it mean, a world where you have a lot of agents and you want to make them work together? You want to build these multi-agent solutions, multi-agent services, and have the agents collaborate and work together. And so we went through what you see on the side of this slide. We really crystallized our thinking across four main problems. How do you discover agents? And this is obviously a big problem and a very interesting topic. Yes, agents will have an IP address and they will end up being an endpoint, or maybe you just find them, ready to deploy as code in some Git repo. But how exactly do you discover agents? It's point number one. How do you help compose agents? Basically, that's how do you write, multi-agent software, or how do you write multi-agent workflows? And there is obviously many different ways to do it, but we thought it was very important to help the industry and sort of level set a little bit the industry with an open and interoperable way to do that. And we are very much of the view that walled gardens can be interesting for a few players, but when we looked at where we come from with the internet itself, there is nothing better than an open and interoperable foundation to maximize the value for the ecosystem, which is developing and deploying on top of this. And so that's where we really thought that the composition will need, maybe a few new protocols, which you can see here. We've actually created a protocol, an open source as part of agency protocol called ACP, Agent Connect Protocol, which is different from the one you mentioned. And this is, the nice collisions in acronyms. This one we actually work closely with LangChain to bring to agency. And it's, one proposal among others. We like A2A as well. A2A is great, and we're going to embrace and support this as well. And so that's for the compose part. And finally, the deploy part is, how we can, help deploy these. So deployment can be primarily seen as a classic cloud native problem, but we've also done some work to help simplify the way you can deploy agents, which are basically using different frameworks, maybe might be based in different clouds, might come from different vendors, but you still want to deploy, your agentic, call graph and workflow with all these agents, and how do you do that? And finally, evaluate, observe and evaluate. So observability, of course, is a big topic for Cisco in general. So we think there is a lot that will, that there's already a lot ongoing in the industry. We see extension to open telemetry, and different observability schemas. And we are, we've started to also open source some of that. So obviously, observability and evaluation, I think this has been well explained, how important it is to understand how agents behave in such complex system. So that's a bit of an overview. The two things I would just highlight as well before maybe there are more questions. The first one is something which we've been obsessed about from the beginning is this architecture and this stack must be distributed and decentralized. And so the way we've been thinking about the agent directory component, which you see here. So agent directory is really a way to store a lot of agent description from different organizations. If I want to use the A2A vocabulary, I would say this is where you can store agent counts, right? And they are all the same: agent records, agent description. And so for that, we created a component called agent directory, which is basically which is an extension of OCI. I won't go too much into detail here, but it's really something which any organization can deploy. So far, so good. Okay, you're just storing some information about agents. But the cool thing about the way we are thinking about it is that this directory can basically sync with each other under various type of policies, which agents you want to open to third parties, which agents you want to keep private to your organization. And as these different directories starts to connect, we literally see, the Internet of Agents, as we call it, backbone forming with all these directories from different organizations connecting. And what we've done as well is that we've set up another facet of our open source initiative in agency called OASF, and OASF stands for Open Agentic Schema Framework. And OASF is really a sort of a branch of OCSF, which has been very successful in the cybersecurity domain to describe, but then of course here adapted to agentic, to describe all type of agentic characteristic, agent characteristic, and it's extendable. So basically, we can keep adding, more types of agents, more domains, different description. We can add manifest, which can be specifically relevant to certain types of protocols. We can even, at the end of the day, reference tools if we want in agent directory, which can be reached through MCP. So we think this is going to be a very interesting initiative, and obviously beyond the discovery, a lot of some security aspect can be hooked, and of course some evaluation aspect can be connected to to agent directory and the network of agent directories. So I'll pause here because I've talked a lot, but hopefully this gives you an idea of the ambition we had and the vision we had behind the Internet of Agent architecture, which you see here.
Thank you so much, Guillermo. That was fantastic. Am I getting your name right again?
Yeah, Guillaume, perfect. That's the French for Guillermo.
Or GSM before
GSM works as well. Yeah.
Yeah, GSM goes even better because we're talking about architectures and networks here. So my very first question is about the current ecosystem, and what's your take? Because if you look at MCP and A2A, that have a lot of momentum and the teams are doing really good work. How does this whole ecosystem play out? Like, how do we make sure, or do we need to make sure that it remains an open, vibrant internet of AI agents?
Yeah, so I think initially when MCP, really started to make noise, I would say on the course of January this year, so it's still fairly recent. It's picking up quickly. It's really a great, it's a great protocol, and it seems a lot of players are aligned into it. Where there was confusion is, and we had to rapidly, explain to the ecosystem. Folks were confused initially that MCP was. Many people thought that MCP would address the agent-to-agent communication and collaboration. And what we had to explain, and not just us, a few others, and I think Google explained it also very well when they released A2A, is that MCP is really the way an agent, and more specifically a foundational model or an LLM, can reach out to a tool. So how an agent can reach out to a specific tool, and this is really perfect for that. So yes, of course, you can say, well, if agent one is reaching out to a tool, and if the same agent one needs to reach out to an agent, which is, let's say, number two, you can always consider an agent as a tool, right? So you can always force, if you want, or shoehorn, an agent-to-agent collaboration behind MCP. But while it's perfect for a tool, it's going to be restrictive for agent-to-agent communication, because the way we've been thinking about agent-to-agent collaboration is much more of a peer-to-peer, right, level type of collaboration, where agent can ping and request services from each other. And by the way, this is point-to-point. We keep talking about point-to-point, but we also have at some point to address group communication for agents. So the best way to think about it is a bunch of agents are getting into the same, Slack or WebEx channel, and they would just start to collaborate, right? So at this point, it's not point-to-point; it's really many-to-many within, hopefully, what would be a secure chat environment between agents. And that's, by the way, something that we are supporting today with the component you see here, which is called Agent Gateway. So back to MCP. MCP is fantastic. MCP is great for tools, but we think that for agent-to-agent communication, things like A2A or ACP or the few other protocol that you mentioned will be probably better choices. And I think now now that we're a few months later, I think the industry starts to really understand, okay, agent to tool is MCP, but agent to agent, this should be a proper agentic communication protocol or service interface.
Yeah, I'm going to bring up the paper I just mentioned one more time, because I thought it has a good way to kind of summarize many of these points going forward. So looking at this table again, right? I mean, there's a lot going on, and like you said, when people thought MCP is going to kind of solve all this problem, that was a good optimism. But in reality, there are many other aspects of this that needs to go on. Tell me a little bit more about your philosophy of the decentralization, and whether that's better in the early stages, it's better in the later stages. Why do you need decentralization? Why do you need the DIDs? Is there a limitation that when there are DIDs and 2 levels of agent cards, there's a high negotiation overhead, and there's an adoption problem, as this paper has described?
Yeah, so I think something which is important here is that so actually, and I know there is always a bit of confusion with acronyms and different initiatives, especially in the state of very early, vibrant and still early stage where we are across the industry. ANP, the last protocol, is not something that we have actually, been proposing and working on. We have two other protocols. One is called ACP and one is called AGP. We've looked. I'm not an expert about ANP here, but there are definitely attributes. All these proposals are, of course, very interesting. And so ANP here, so I mean, I can talk about some of the stuff we do, but in this paper, ANP, yes, indeed, has a bias towards, a good bias, I would say, towards decentralization. So in our case, decentralization is really important as I said, at the discovery level. Because if you think about it, what we think is really important is, so for agent identity and agent discovery, things have to be decentralized. If there is one central authority or one central player which is providing identity in a centralized way, or which is providing discovery in a centralized way, you're immediately back into a form of walled garden, right? And that's what we wanted to avoid. So agent identity, yes, we are big believers in using decentralized identity, even potentially, trustless type of environment. We can, DIDs are great. There's also ideas around how this can be tied to some form of Web3, DIDs being part of this, but also blockchain types of records. So any method by which you can provide strong identity and strong ways for a third party to verify, to authenticate, and to verify the integrity of any agent record or agent card that you pull from a directory. That's very important. And the directories themselves, the way we've been thinking about it is, rather than saying, oh, there is a central directory and everyone is going to use this, or there are a couple, we thought that the idea that any organization could start their own directory or use the directory of a third-party organization that we trust, and then all these directories start to connect progressively, which is really the kind of capabilities that we are working on enabling with agency. This is super powerful because, and then we can connect this back to the good old internet with DNS and discovery capabilities. We can insert security, but it's going to be challenging to just use this is a case where we thought it was important to create a sort of a new layer in the architecture. We obviously are not reinventing any of the underlying level. We think we should leverage cloud native and the internet infrastructure as much as possible. But in the case of discovery, yeah, we felt decentralization and putting all players in the ecosystem on a neutral ground to play. Anyone can create an agent, anyone can announce its agent, anyone can discover agent and assemble them into multi-agent systems and multi-agent teams. That's fundamental. We need to enable that completely for the ecosystem in a neutral way.
If you heard the previous panel, there was a lot of discussion about what does it mean to be in garden with many flowers versus a walled garden. And so if you have to satisfy multiple constraints, on one hand, the enterprises want a more traditional HTTP URL based agents that are behind a firewall where the agent card cannot be discovered. At the same time, you have kind of consumer facing solutions that are a little bit more open-ended. And then finally, you also have traditional kind of Web3 cryptos type agents that use DIDs and self-sovereign identity. How do you see all these three kind of coexisting? Or do they need to coexist?
Yes, they should coexist, because you cannot say, I think there's already a long track record of enterprise adopting consumer technologies, right? And so some of the best agents which will be useful to enterprise will come from the consumer domain. So I don't want to repeat myself too much here, but by the way, I like the way you summarize, stuff coming from the crypto Web3 domain, stuff coming from the agents coming from the consumer, others, really will emerge purely for the enterprise world. But they need to be all discoverable in a similar way. If you think about the way the internet works today, anyone can create a website and publish, right? It's not something which you have to go through a lot of gatekeepers, and you don't have to be chosen by a walled garden organization to do that. Once so websites are easy to discover, and they are easy to set up. How you transact with this website is completely different problem, right? So whether you're authorized to use a certain agent, whether you choose to use a certain agent because you decide they are trusted or not, this is a different problem. But being able to discover and to have this mesh of agent directories which can sync with each other, we think is the best way to enable the three models simultaneously in a neutral way. But if an enterprise adopts this model, you can still fine-grain control, just like we do today with IP addresses. There's a lot of IP addresses. You can decide, my enterprise network will never talk to that IP address because I think it's rogue or because I don't like it for any reason. You can do the same with agents, but agents are still discoverable, and you can look at metadata about these agents, right? You can pull their records, you can pull their cards. And then, many solutions will come to help filter, help decide whether a given organization, even if you think about SASE, SSE type of solutions out there in the market, really zero trust type of solution, the same will apply here. but not at the discovery level, at the next level, when you get into respectively enterprise domain or other domains. But again, I think it's very important that there is a universal way. If we start to have, a big fragmentation between consumer, enterprise, this will create frictions, just like when we decided that these type of devices should get into the enterprise because they were just awesome. It will be the same with some consumer agents.
There's a big big messy future coming up. In
It
this.
is fascinating.
Yeah.
And just the last thing, I'm sure we are coming at the end of this, but the thing I want to say again and leave our audience with, it's going to be a multi-agent future. So yes, we are barely there with agents, but the minute you have one agent, as I said, the second after, you want this agent to talk to another agent, and you want them to be smart and collaborate together. And that's the problem we've been obsessed about, right? There's many solutions to build agents. We can talk about it, but we are really focusing on how we create this internet of agents, because they will need to work together, and not just between agents, sometimes with human in the loop, as we know, right? Which is very important too.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw the demo earlier from the MIT scientist Ayush on being able to connect between either human in the loop or agents directly, and also has a registry that can go across. And in about 1 hour, you'll see another demo from another scientist working with NANDA that connects Web3 type agents with more traditional agents.
So I missed that particular demo because I was a bit late to joining the panel, but I will definitely go back and watch that. And, again, with the agency collective, we're super, the collective is obsessed by opening this, right? So if we have any opportunity to work together, we'll be delighted to do that.
Yeah, we're already working together because I and Vijay had an official dinner to work together.
Wonderful.
So we're already working together, but I'm really, really excited with how you're thinking about these very specific aspects of the ecosystem. And just to summarize, anything you can say to this wider community who are thinking about open source, thinking about open protocol, creating their agents, creating network of agents.
Yeah,
Especially on the NANDA team, we have a lot of professors. We have about 15 different universities working together.
Yeah. So
anything you can say to them to inspire them on this mission?
No, let me try to be inspiring. We'll see if I am. But by the way, there are areas like our team in UK. I heard someone said, we tried, to apply agentic to ourselves to learn, and this is a very good idea. So I would say experimenting is really, really important. You need to progress, practical experimentation and learning by doing, alongside with, the more theoretical. Both needs to go together. In our team, we've done a lot of experiment on a project that we, maybe not in a very original way, called Jarvis. And Jarvis is looking after, in my team, so I lead all the engineering for Outshift, which is Cisco incubation team, where we are very active on the agentic area. And the team under me, who's leading all our SRE platform work, actually, we're always resource constrained, right? We're always like, not enough people. And so we started to agentify a lot of what we are doing with, automating the deployment of, workloads and, all the, just, hey, I need resources, I need allocation in the cloud, I need to deploy this, hey, I need to have a telemetry feed on that. And now our engineers are really talking to Jarvis. So if you Google it, Outshift and Jarvis, Cisco Outshift and Jarvis, you'll see we've published quite a lot of good stuff. And now we have a bunch of, interns and students, in UK specifically, because this is where the bulk of the team is, hacking with this. So I cannot encourage folks to experiment enough. That's point number one. Try different frameworks, try different things. And agency is really open for open source collaboration. So we are adding a lot of open source application in agency, a lot of sample application with a lot of examples, including some that I just mentioned. So it's a great opportunity to go and learn. And we keep adding new capabilities. And if we see something really rising in the ecosystem, and if it makes sense to adopt, we'll adopt, and we won't reinvent or duplicate, because the only thing we want is this thing to work, right? lower the bar as much as possible. And then at the end, large companies like Cisco and many others will compete with enterprise-grade solution, and this is our intention too. But we have to as rapidly as possible enable universities, students, future CEOs, and startups with these capabilities, so that we can all build the interesting stuff on top. We've always been interested by plumbing at Cisco, so here again we are doing the plumbing, the boring part. But this is just to let people immediately jump on the juicy, business logic. And by the way, something I didn't comment it, but we have some aspect of agency which is getting into the semantic layer, which is the most interesting. Like, we have a wonderful component called IO Mapper. Two agents can be talking A to A, or two agents can be talking ACP, yet they might not understand each other. And for that, we have a component which is semantically connecting them. So that's pure natural language connection. It's an LLM as such. But this is the kind of very interesting utility agents which we are adding into agency to accelerate the way folks can stitch agents together. So I really encourage people to look into this, and look into a lot of great frameworks which exist out there: Crew AI, LangGraph, and more. So yeah, Llama Index. There's many great frameworks.
I think it reminds me of the early days of the internet, where there's so many amazing things that are happening in parallel. So if you're a founder, if you're a researcher, this is the time to get in. GSM, I think
it will change society. Literally. I mean, I really loved, and I cannot agree more with what someone said earlier on the panel, which is, in a few years, we say, I was a pioneer. I started working on agents, in 2025, maybe 2024 for some. And I cannot agree more. This is going to be, there's going to be it's a big, massive shift, and it's coming rapidly. I'm also very impressed by how fast this is happening. Even compared to the cloud revolution and the pivot to cloud and cloud native, which took a few years, this is even happening faster. And maybe accelerated by the fact that coding itself is being disrupted, right? So everything is going faster. So yeah, that's quite impressive. It's a very, very special moment in the history of the industry. I've never been through something like this, and I'm old enough to have been through a few big, tectonic shifts, but that one is like no other.
That's amazing. GSM, thank you for joining. I encourage everybody to go check the agency website. We'll post the
agency.org.
Agency.org.
And this is the fancy agency, no vowels inside, agntcy.org, as you saw on the logo.
So
I'll put the link in the chat. Yeah,
please put the link in the chat. I encourage everybody to go and check some amazing work coming out of agency, some of the papers, some of the ideas, and of course, the NANDA team is working and collaborating with many aspects of it. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, guys.